At the time of 9/11, when I went to physically look, I saw a huge cloud of smoke that was never ending. My high school friends were the police officers. Other high school friends were the firefighters. My father worked at Trump Tower. I used to work as a limousine driver, and I would drive people to that area. Any one of us could have been there. That was really, really terrorizing. It affected all of us as citizens being here.
All right. So, hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Book Cafe Podcast. I'm your host, Omar Nizam. And in today's episode, we will be talking to a very dear friend of mine whom I've had the pleasure of knowing for almost 15 years now, who's done a lot of work in the interfaith community in the US. And he's got a lot of stories to share and to tell. So, without further ado, let me introduce our guest, Mr. Mohammed Ferras Alhomsi. Hi, Ferras. Welcome to the show. It's really great to connect with you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. Glad to be here.
Awesome. So first, as the host of the show, I know exactly who you are, but for our viewers and listeners who haven't had the pleasure of keeping up to date with your work and all the wonderful stuff that you've been doing for the past 15 years or so, do please take this opportunity to introduce yourself so that our audience can get a better idea of who you are and what is it that you do. So yeah.
Sure thing. Sure thing. Thank you very much, Omar. Yeah, so my name is Mohammed Alhomsi. My middle name is Ferras. I'm also known by Ferris, like Bueller. Some people say Ferris Bueller's Day Off. They associate it with that movie, which is a comedy movie, and they get a laugh out of it. Some people associate it with Ferris wheel. Honestly, to me, it doesn't bother me whatever I'm called by, as long as I answer to Ferris, Firas, Mohammed, whatever you call me, I will answer. uh, and yeah, I've been living in the United States for 36 years. I hail from Damascus, Syria, and as a child in Damascus, Syria. I was raised in a very pluralistic environment where we have a very, very deep history of Christianity in Malula, in Mount Kalamun, in the oldest churches that exist in the world. They exist in Syria. We had a street there called the Jewish Street, and it was filled with Syrian Jews. And of course, I came from a Muslim family. I come from a Muslim family, and as a child, I honestly remember very well. It stuck in my memory how my father was friends with Syrian Christians, Syrian Jews, Syrian Muslims. They never really let us feel that there was a difference in our sisterhood and brotherhood in humanity. They did business together. They trusted each other. They lent each other money. They helped each other in times of need. So they had respect for each other. They attended each other's occasions. They attended each other's weddings. They attended each other's funerals. They visited each other in the hospitals. So, that was what I always felt was embedded in me.
Right. Yeah. First, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. And I really do appreciate you touching on your life in Syria before coming to the US. And so, given all my conversations that I've had with you over the years, so I can completely understand that Syria was a multi-religious community where you had Christians, Muslims, and Jews living together in harmony. They saw themselves as part of one big community, and there was always people helping each other, buying from each other, trading from each other, etc. And so that's really wonderful to hear. So first, coming to your life in the US, how would you compare and contrast what you left behind in Syria with your multi-religious community versus the US today in 2024? Would you say that the US is a lot more fractured today than it was maybe a couple of years back? Or would you say that there's still a lot of common ground for Jews, Christians, Muslims, and other faith groups to come together? Your thoughts on that, please.
Sure, Omar. I was brought from Syria when I was 11 years old. So
Mhm.
I had the opportunity to observe how it is to live in Syria as a
Mhm.
child.
Yep.
And I've shared my observation earlier. When I was brought to the United States, actually at the time, the first place I came to was New York City. What I've observed is that when people would hear that we came from Syria, they would think of Syria or being Arabian or being Muslim as something that's exotic.
Mm.
And the American society, they actually used to, a lot of times, they used to show appreciation and happiness to meet us, to be our neighbors, to live around us, because we as Muslims, first of all, we didn't have any big parties late at night. We didn't drink alcohol and act obnoxious. We didn't do drugs. As a society, generally speaking, we were pretty good neighbors, and whatever our mothers or our sisters cooked, they always shared with the neighbors. So the neighbors were usually beneficiaries of our lifestyle and culture and religious practices. So for a very long time in the United States, at the days of Clinton, you know, I remember the economy was doing well. People were more trustworthy between each other and among each other. There was more family orientation. Even when you watch movies like Home Alone, or all those movies that came back in the day were more family oriented. They had a moral uh, message
Right.
that they wanted to give.
Mhm.
There was like more like, a musician could not have been a musician unless that musician have went to music school, got their studies, got their degrees, and really invested the time into earning the title.
Right.
An athlete was not just able to just become a world famous athlete if they didn't invest into themselves. A lawyer was not hired unless that lawyer showed, experience for a long time, wisdom and things. So that was my observation of how the U.S. was, and absolutely, our current uh, situation in the US is completely different than the way it was. If you're in America, are you with the Republicans or are you with the Democrats? If you're in Syria, are you with the president or are you against? If you're in Bangladesh, I could only imagine you probably guys have two sides as well. Especially on a day like this. First of all, today is September 11th.
Mm.
It being in the U.S., I'm deeply saddened every single time I hear about any human being dying.
Right. And first, can I just press you a bit on your experiences specifically with regards to 9/11? Because as you rightly pointed out, we are in fact recording this on September 11, 2024. Do you remember where exactly you were when the attacks happened, and what exactly was the climate like just after 9/11 with regards to being an Arab Muslim in America? Do please share your thoughts on that.
Yes, sure, sure. At the time of 9/11, I remember I was sleeping when the first building was hit, and my mother woke me up and she said, Look, there's this all over TV." At the time, I used to live in North Bergen, New Jersey. So when I went to physically look, I saw a huge cloud of smoke that was never ending, that was going into the sky. On the news, I'm watching everything. It was like breaking news. That was really, really terrorizing, because I had friends who called me and said, "Hey, did you know that John was there and he died, and his mother and this." Like, my high school friends were the police officers. My other high school friends were the firefighters. My other high school friends, they worked at the district. My father worked at Trump Tower, actually, in the city at the time, at Saudi Arabian Airlines on Fifth Avenue and 57th Street. So he would be going to the city every single day. He would be using the train every single day. I used to work as a limousine driver, and I would drive people to that area. Any one of us could have been there. So that terroristic thing that happened, uh, it affected all of us as citizens being here. My mother wears a scarf. Everyone, when they would see her, be like, "Oh, go back to your country, terrorists." Or, my mother, my sisters, they saw a big backlash. There was some Muslim girls who took off their scarf because they were afraid of being attacked and getting associated with that. So to be quite honest, for us as a Muslim community living in the U.S., we were in the front line of all this backlash, from younger crowd, older crowd, racist crowds. Being in the U.S. now, it's like every time that 9/11 comes, you hear all those posts, "We will never forget." What exactly is it that you'll never forget? You'll never forget, um, the building falling or the people being killed, or you will never forget that you pointed to the Arabs and associated the Muslims and the Al Qaeda and this and that. What exactly you will never forget? So people are different. Some people are genuine in that we'll never forget that the United States went through that. The New York community went through that. The families of the affected ones went through that, and my heart is with them. But then there are those people who say we'll never forget because they're associating Islam and Arabic people, Arabian people, into the 100% full responsibility of that happening, which I am not a political analyst. I don't know about history. I don't know if it was done by them or if it wasn't. I don't do investigations. That's not my cup of tea. But if we look at the history of all the incidents that do happen around the world, we realize that there's blood on most people's hands, most countries' hands, most world leaders' hands, most of I think it's much more effective if every one of us begin to kind of turn the camera onto ourselves and fix our own actions. Ask ourselves, how are we observing this situation? What can I do to do things differently? Because having peace domestically within the US and having peace internationally, I think it takes us to say to ourselves, what would I do if I was in their shoe? Mm-hmm. What would I do if I was in their shoe? Always to put ourselves in that other person's shoes, and that's a metaphor to say, if I was in their position, what would I do? For us, we felt a sense of not belonging. Mm-hmm. If that makes any sense, yeah. Because we're in the US, we're making the US home for us, right, as civilized and law-abiding citizens who go to school, work, live paycheck to paycheck. We're going through the culture, the American dream, the everyday life, and there we are. Now we're not feeling like we're home. We're to a point we even didn't feel like we're safe. We would go to the mosque to pray. We didn't feel like we're safe there. Right. In school, we didn't feel like we're safe. That was mainly what I remember from that time. That time period, right. Living around, and I was living around the area, and I still do live around the area.
Absolutely. Right. So just coming back to what you said at the very beginning. So in the 80s, late 80s, 90s, it was quite exotic to be an Arab Muslim in America. And then when you have the events of 9/11, so suddenly you're like a pariah. So coming to present day, Ferris, in 2024, would you say that the perception that regular Americans have towards Arabs and Muslims has gotten better over time, or is it still pretty much at the same level as it was post 9/11? So do tell us about that.
Hmm. What I've been enjoying, I mean, deep down inside me, I've been enjoying one thing that is happening, and that one thing is that I'm learning more about when you have dictatorship, everything is usually lined up and everything is on the spot exactly how you want it. But when you have democracy and you have different, democracy is messy, and you have different opinions, and you have, and I think what is happening in the United States, it's democracy. So yes, right now there's a huge uh, divide and different opinions, and but I think that that is what democracy is about.
Right.
I wouldn't want to see a complete peace and dictatorship, because to me, if you have a dictatorship system and you have peace, that's not true peace. This is just, boiling personalities that are being um, silenced,
Right.
and not being allowed to be expressive. Uh, so yes, you do have temporary peace, but one day, in my opinion, in the future, that will blow up.
Right.
But what we have here is we have very expressive people
Yeah,
and very strong expressive
exactly.
opinions,
Yes.
and we have a system. We have in the U.S. we have a constitution that says that every 4 years we're required to have a new president, and the maximum a president could hold power is for 2 terms, which is 8 years. And so far, the Constitution and the judicial law has been able to uphold that and keep it into effect. Keep in mind, any country, I mean, just like I go back to Syria, it's not easy to host, uh, to have citizens in the country who come from different religions, different cultures, different philosophies, strong opinionated. It's not easy to accommodate them all, because every time you accommodate one, the other one will be like, oh, you accommodated them, but you didn't accommodate me. So the US, especially the tri-state area, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Connecticut, it's a very, very diverse area. You have the Indian, you have Bangladesh, you have the Arabian, you have the black, you have the white, you have the Jewish, you have the Hindu, you have the woman, you have the man, you have the gays, you have the lesbians, you have every
Everybody.
single, you go on a train in the city, and all you got to do is just like look around. But somehow, some way, New York City has been able to make that work for everybody
Absolutely.
by putting those constitutional laws and rules and observation and allowing. So that
That's awesome.
in
Yeah.
I have very, very deep hope that the U.S. eventually will be again an international leader in diversity, in interfaith, in peace building, in foreign relations. Right now, what we have is not, it's not what the U.S. is about. Right now, we have a very messy political system, but I think we're going to grow out of that. We're going to go back to what the Constitution upholds, because what the Constitution upholds is really truly what the American message is truly about, in my opinion.
Absolutely. Well, thanks so much for sharing that, Ferris. And as you rightly said, that New York City is the kind of city where you have the entire world living together, which brings me to my follow-up question: that given all the wonderful work that you've done in interfaith over the past 15, 20 years or so, what exactly, how do you do it? I mean, what exactly are the challenges in getting people to get along in an interfaith group, or trying to find common ground versus just letting people, do their own thing and, not minding if they, whether they not really being so invested in whether people get along or not. So do tell us about that a bit more and what the secrets
It's,
are to getting people to get along together. Yeah.
sure. Thank you for that important question, Omar. So, I am a Muslim, uh, and I say that
Mhm.
without the need to apologize of being a Muslim. And to me, the Quran has been a guidance for me.
Mhm.
Uh, and when I read the Quran, I remember the story of Moses, peace be upon him, and how when he was faced with the ocean being in front of him and the army of the Pharaoh behind him, uh, uh, he by his friends, his companions, they asked him, "What are you going to do now?" And I feel like Moses. I feel like the ocean is in front of me, and the enemy, the Pharaoh, who said that I am your God, and you're not allowed to worship any other god but me, and who killed people, is right behind him with his army, and Moses is weak, and the response of Moses was that uh, God is with me and he will guide me. So this told me that you don't have to look at the entire elephant. You don't have to look at the entire situation when you are faced with challenging situations. You just have to have the belief that that you are on the right track and you're headed in the right direction. You're on the right side of history, and have faith that and increase your faith that your Lord and your creator is with you, and you will be guided, whether it's intuition, whether it's meeting educated people like yourself, whether how it comes, I don't know. And all I can tell you is my effort has been blessed. How did I get here? I honestly don't know. I couldn't give the GPS or the map to anybody to say, oh, this is how I got here, so you can get here the same way. My efforts have been blessed. Every time I do something, it has been recognized one way or another. And that has been opening up the door for me and introducing me to more people who are like-minded. I like to also relate it to the book The Secret, or The Law of Attraction.
Right.
Um, I feel like all these things, they come together. It's like once you get on a path, you begin to kind of meet more like-minded people who are on the same path.
Mhm. Right.
Once you're headed in the right direction, you kind of begin to meet more people who are headed in that same direction. So if you're a smoker or a drinker or a gambler, you begin to meet more gamblers and drinkers and smokers.
Mhm.
And if
Right.
you're an avid reader, you begin to meet more avid
People
readers,
who are
because you'll be hanging
absolutely
in the library, and
right.
then all of a sudden, you're meeting
Yeah.
the readers.
Absolutely.
If and so just had it once you're kind of focused on academics or education, you begin to meet more academics.
Mhm.
And so far, the best path that I've been on are the academic path.
Mhm.
As long as I'm more, I consider myself to be an observer of what is Islam, what is Islam about, what is Christianity, what is Judaism, what is the Bible, what is the Torah, what is the Quran, what are languages, what is the history of language, in what language was this book revealed in, what do we have as historical evidence that this is the book or this. So as long as I'm having those dialogues and those, I'm met with really, I'm met with other academics who have been also searching for the truth.
Mhm.
So because they're on that mission, we're kind of like-minded. So we develop this mutual respect for each other. So the path recently led me to CNN asked us to do a TV segment on our work in the Interfaith Encounter Association. And they broadcasted it live on CNN on Thanksgiving, November 23rd, I believe, of last year.
Right.
So that has given us more exposure,
Mm.
and through that, I met a couple of other people who are in Canada. One person is in Copenhagen. Of course, I know you're in Bangladesh, and I love how Zoom provided for us a virtual space to have those interactions and to share with each other uh, our thoughts and exchange information and learn from each other. Uh, uh,
Yeah.
so yeah,
That's
yeah.
awesome. So it's a global community that's coming together via interfaith. But first, let me ask a difficult question here. As you know that we're going through a period of time where Israel and Palestine seems to have dominated for almost a year now. So just one question with regards to this. How does that impact the interfaith group vis-a-vis the relationship between Jews and Muslims or Jews and Arabs? And has that been a challenge that you've managed to overcome, or is it still something that's, maybe not really touched upon just for the sake of having a more cordial atmosphere? So do tell us about that if you'd like to. Yeah.
Thank you. So during the CNN interview, I was asked a question. I was asked like almost the same question, and my answer is that uh, when people ask me what I do, and I say I do interfaith, and I build bridges between Jewish and Muslims mainly, they say I wouldn't want to be you these days, because it's when I took on this path, what was happening now was not happening. So these days, because this is happening, I find a backlash from both sides, where a lot of or some of my Muslim community have backlash against me because I build relationships with people who are Jewish, and some people who are Jewish, they they didn't allow me to be able to express any feelings toward my community. The Palestinian, the Muslim community are my community. They're my people. That's who I see in the mosque every time that I go. And when I have a Palestinian person that I know, who has a cousin who's dealing with this live, who's living in Gaza, or the West Bank, I cannot dismiss that.
Right.
I cannot not attend the funeral. I cannot not condole them, and I must show, feelings toward that. When I watch what is happening, my humanity is touched, and I need to address that. And when I do that, I was associated automatically with you talk about Gaza and this, and they associate you directly with, oh, you're anti-Semitic. So no, that's not true. As far away from being anti-Semitic, uh, I have great relations with my Jewish colleagues, and that have lasted for a very long time. But recently, I was asked to give a speech at a mosque, uh, and when the imam of that mosque found out that I was asked to give a speech there, he he said to the board that no, that I should not give a speech because I do interfaith, and because I do interfaith, they associated me with a Freemasonry, a Masonic. They associated me with those top organizations who are trying to whatever in their mind was going to demolish Islam and this and that and New World Order, and they associated me with all of that. And so they called me back and they apologized. They took that invitation back. And at the same time, that day, I went for that Friday sermon, And when I went to that Friday sermon, the imam was giving a lecture straight against me in front of everybody
Oh,
to
wow.
say that that there's a guy named Mohammed and he could be associated. He says that he does the interfaith, but he could be associated with the Freemasons, and
Mm.
uh, they're trying to switch your faith and so don't trust him, and don't trust even if it's his wife or his kids. They come to you because they'll come to you in a soft way and they'll manipulate you and this. So my wife came out of that mosque crying that day. And I felt as though, like, somebody like him saying things like that will bring immediate threat to me, my family, my household. So I kind of backed off from that mosque. And I did mention it to my Jewish colleagues that I went through that incident. And they were very supportive. And,
Yeah.
they felt very bad. But, just to answer your question, we are dealing with real life issues these days. So how do I go about that? I go about it by continuing
Mhm.
uh, building relations with Omar, with my Jewish colleagues, like Joan Goldstein is the other co-chair of the Interfaith Encounter Association. I continually continue with those relations. Every opportunity I get to host an interfaith dinner or lunch throughout the year, I do that. Uh, and the more I am doing that, the more people I am meeting who are on the same path. So I think together we're kind of strengthening each other. We're strengthening each other, and there are many organizations around the world and many people who are doing this interfaith
Right.
type of work.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I am very saddened to hear that the Imam had attacked you personally in his khutbah, which is very uncalled for. And I've never ever heard any Imam in any mosque in the world ever doing something this deliberate. But yeah, more power to you and to your family, Ferras, for sticking to your guns and continuing with the good work that you're doing in bringing people together. Because I can say, I can honestly say that nothing succeeds like success. And the more you're able to bring people together, this is the best message to give to those people who aren't as like-minded or as open-minded in bringing people together. So, first, we're almost coming towards the end of our episode, but just before we let you go, as you know that our show is entitled Book Cafe Podcast, so the word book is in the title. So I have to ask you one or two questions specifically related to books, just like we ask all of our guests. So with your permission, let me ask you the questions. Are you more of a fiction person or a nonfiction person? What genre of books do you enjoy reading?
Nonfiction and self-development books.
Okay. And would you like to throw out a name of a self-development book that you really love or would highly recommend for
Of
reading?
course, of course. On my personal journey, I quit smoking cigarettes after 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
And about 4 years ago, I did a weight loss surgery and I dropped from 300 pounds to 170.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been practicing those self-help books. And one of them that really helped me was called the CBT, Cognitive Behavioral Therapy,
Mm-hmm.
which was a self-help book that you can just open up and do uh, exercises yourself. Um, and you and the book could really find the difference there. And I also signed up with Toastmasters International, which they have a chapter all over the world, local chapters all over the world, and that enhances the public speaking skills. How can I communicate with people my messages if I don't have those, if I don't understand what is body language, what is vocal variety, what is tone of voice, facial expressions. If I don't understand that, how how can I communicate with people? So I wanted to communicate with people better. For instance, a book by John Maxwell called Everyone, I think along the lines like everyone communicates, but only if you connect. And that is when I've learned that there's a difference between communicating. I mean, some people are communicating with thousands of people every day, but how many people are they connecting with? How many people say, ah, me too? How many people relate to what they're saying? It's those connections that solidify that communication. Uh, and then when they do connect with that person, did they learn how to nurture that relationship?
Right.
I feel that many people know how to begin relationships, but not many people know how to
How
nurture
to
them
nurture it.
to
Right.
survive time.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
for
So
sure.
those are like,
Those are the
yeah.
best.
So
Yeah.
John Maxwell,
Right.
John Maxwell, everyone communicates, but few connect. CBT,
Mm.
any book about CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, it talks about neuro linguistic programming,
Mhm.
and it helps you really more understand about yourself, um, and um, and Rich Dad Poor Dad,
Robert
by
Kiyosaki.
Robert Kiyosaki,
Yeah.
to talk about financial education, a lot of things that you're not taught in school.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I do that, although I'm into the interfaith and things like this, I'm not reading those genres because I believe in the verse that says, بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الله لا يغير ما بقوم حتى يغيروا ما بأنفسهم, which translates to, in the meaning of the words, that God will not change the condition of a society or condition of the people until each one of those people changes what is within themselves.
Right.
So I turned the camera around and I stopped pointing fingers because I realized that that's a waste of time, and it's a waste of energy, and energy that we don't have much of. We're limited in the amount of energy that we as human beings can generate every day. So how do we invest that energy? Where do we put that energy into? So, and I found that the most effective way to spend this energy is into self-development. This way you kind of develop this machine that you rely on, to understand people better and to build a better perception, so you can have a better response when people communicate with you.
Absolutely. Well, on that note, I have to say that, Ferras, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I really loved speaking to you about your experiences in Arab Muslim American, and all the books that you've recommended. I mean, there's so many to choose from. And my follow-up question was usually always about what book would you recommend for people to read, but you've already gone above and beyond that and giving a couple of books, which I will definitely have in the description, so that everybody who is watching or listening to this podcast can go ahead and pick up those books. So let's catch up soon, Ferras, and more power to you in continuing all the great work that you're doing with your interfaith group. And if anybody wanted to join your interfaith group or keep in touch with your work, what would be the best way to get in touch with you? Do tell us about that.
So I have a blog website, which is called my first name and last name, MohammedAlhomsi.com, where I usually post about the interfaith and the link or they can just Google Interfaith Encounter Association. They will see a lot of different activities all over the world. We here belong to the Bergen County chapter in New Jersey. And anyone who is local to here is more than welcome to join us. They can reach out to me at mfalhomsi@interfaith-encounter.org, or I'll send you that email that you could post it on your podcast. Yeah, that would be the best way to contact.
Wonderful. Ferras, it's been fascinating. Thank you so much once again, my friend. Have a good day, and let's catch up soon, inshallah. Jazakallah khair.
Appreciate you. Thank you very much, Omar.
Okay. Bye-bye.